I mean, it's a lot to fix, isn't it?
I mean, it's the most competitive division in football, don't you think?
Yeah.
Albert, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, guys. How we doing?
We're doing awesome, Albert. So there are some in our town that are not happy that the Bears did not get more line play. There are others who are ecstatic that the Colston Loveland pick appeared to be the one the people around the league were trying to trade up to get. So where are you on what the Bears did?
You know, I think they just sort of reacted to the way the thing fell to them, to be honest with you. If you look at it, you know, I think they've had a lot of interest in the tackles. We've talked about that. I think they had an interest in Ashton Genty. And, you know, by the time they were on the clock, I think clear top three tackles, in the opinion of most people, were gone because the Saints had just taken the last one, Kelvin Banks, at 9. And obviously Ashton Genty was long gone, having gone 6 for the Raiders. So, you know, then I think you sort of pivot. You say, okay, what's the best chance we have to get an impact player? And I think at that point you're looking at the 2 tight ends. And, you know, I would also say there are plenty of people that preferred Loveland to Warren. I know that wasn't the narrative out there, but, you know, I like the more I talk to people, the more, you know, you realize this was really about kind of like the flavor of tight end you wanted, you know, which was with Loveland, a more evolved tight end. He's younger, too. He's 3 years younger. But a guy who's more of like a polished route runner, a guy who gets separation where, you know, he's more of the Kelsey where, you know, like Warren was more the Gronk, like who was, like maybe he isn't always getting great separation, but, you know, he's just so tough and physical and such a Swiss Army knife of a weapon. He was just a little bit different than Loveland was.
So this time last year,
and
Albert,
by the way, guys, they still got a tackle. I mean, the Bears still got a tackle in the top 60. You know what I mean? Like, so that was a draft.
Trapillo.
Yeah, Ozzie Trapillo from Boston College, who, by the way,
I mean, when you guys see this guy, he blocks out the sun. He is massive.
Yeah, he's huge. His late father, played in the NFL, 4th-round pick of the Saints. He played with our teammate Tommy Waddle together at BC, so a lot of history coming in.
Yeah, he's and I think he's an interesting prospect. We'll see what happens. I mean, I will say this: he's one of these kids. You heard people talk about Genty this way a lot. He had some big money offers to leave Boston College, and maybe and there were certain schools that I know were in on him, and you know he resisted all of that and stayed at Boston College out of loyalty. You know, it's obviously he's a legacy there and everything else, and. So I think in a lot of ways, like you're going to get a kid who is going to do all the right things and be the right sort of guy, and we'll see where his potential is. Obviously, again, he's got this massive frame, and was a really good player over 5 years at Boston College.
With all the movement that the Bears have made offensively, Albert, with the offensive line, getting Loveland and having Burton on this team and others, so how much of an upgrade is it for the Bears and Caleb Williams for this upcoming season? I mean, there's players there. But does that mean playoffs for the Bears based on its personnel?
I mean, I know everybody comes out of the draft wanting to say, like, okay, like we got this roster set. What are the expectations now? I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Loveland and how they use him. And they obviously already have Cole Kmet there, so this is going to be kind of a different way of playing offense, probably a little bit more 12 personnel. How does Luther Burden fit into that? I just think they've given themselves a lot of options to play whatever way they want to play now. And, I would say, if you look at the Lions over the last few years, Sam Laporta became a really important piece of their offense. And they went to Laporta over and over and over again in big spots. And, I don't think it's crazy to draw some parallels to sort of the polish that Laporta has to his game and what Colston Loveland's going to be bringing to the table. So, I think you've created a situation now for yourself where, you're going to have an offense that looks relatively complete. We'll see what happens at the left tackle spot, but I think just about everywhere else, you look like you're set not just for now, but maybe for the next couple of years, and we'll see what Ben Johnson can do with all of it. I think the other thing is, the better you get around Caleb Williams, the more of a clean read you're going to be able to get on who he is. And that's such a big piece of this. Like, over the first 3 years of their career, you really want to know you want to try to get as clear a read on who they are and who they can become. And before you start, into, okay, like, do we pick up his fifth-year option? Do we extend him? Because those are all expensive propositions. So this gives the Bears a good shot to do it, too. With 3 picks in the first 2 rounds that are sunk into offense.
Cap, one thing we have not broken down, and we still have time, is to look at the Bears versus the rest of the NFC North, because it's about your personnel, but also do you have enough draft capital that can make an impact right away? Do the Bears have more of that than, say, Minnesota or Green Bay? I mean, that's that big question as well, right?
Yeah, I feel like, Albert, the Bears are going to be a rising team. Does that mean they're going to get to the playoffs? I don't know.
Yeah.
But I feel like they're going to be rising. The other teams, I'm not all in on Green Bay. I think they have a good team. Minnesota's talented. You called that last year when they were, I think 5.5 was their over-under number, and they obviously were great. But Detroit's changing both coordinators. I mean, it's a lot to fix, isn't it?
It's the most competitive division in football, don't you think?
Yes.
I mean,
yes, it is.
I don't know if there's another division of football that's as balanced from top to bottom. You can make the argument, I guess, with the AFC West or the AFC North, but even in those divisions, it's like, I think if the Bears are the 4th team in the NFC North, I think you probably put them around the Browns and the Raiders right now, So yeah, I mean, if you feel like you've got a team that's ready to take a step, it's a tough division to take a step in just because of what's in front of you. And even if there's a fall off in Detroit, guys, they won 14 games last year. Like, so what is that fall off? Is it 10 or 11 wins? That's still a playoff team. So I'm with you in that they've had a lot of change, and that's a ton of turnover on their coaching staff. But I don't think they're going to fall off the table altogether. I still think it's a really talented team that has a lot going for it.
I got to ask you about Nick Chubb. There was stuff out of Cleveland yesterday that the Browns are probably going to move on. He's a free agent, but he had hoped to go back there. And then the report came, he's close to a deal with an NFC North team. We believe that's the Bears. Is that true? What do you think of him?
Yeah, I haven't dug into that quite as much yet, so I can't say for sure one way or the other. But, just as far as the person, 100 out of 100. You know what I mean? Like, he is exactly what you're looking for, just in the type of person you want in your building. And, I can say this pretty confidently. If there's ability left in his body, he is going to get it out. He is going to get it out of himself. If you sign him, I think your expectations have to be tempered by, this is a guy who came into the league beat up, who has a lot of mileage on his legs, who has serious injury 2 years ago. And, we're not even talking about, back nine. We're talking about, probably walking to the clubhouse right now. But,
right.
If you can get him in and he can play a role for you, I think it's good to have a guy like that in the locker room. And, I do think to some degree, if you look at how the backfield was set up in Detroit, it kind of wanted that. What do they call them? Was it Sonic and Knuckles, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
You want that thunder and lightning combo, and that's what they had with David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs there. So it's one of the reasons why, honestly, why they moved away from DeAndre Swift, who I think they felt had some similar skills to what they were bringing in with Gibbs to bring in the bigger back. So Chubb, I think, would be more of that bigger back. But you can make the argument Roschon Johnson can play that role too. So, I still think that's the one position where you see some moving parts. But you have an idea of what the ideal is from what Ben had going for him in Detroit.
More with Albert Breer right around the corner on the Kap and J Hood Morning Show. So, Albert, again, the big shadow over the draft was Shador Sanders going to the 5th round. You wrote about it on SI.com. You can go there right now as we have our conversation. So, the honest discussion about Shador Sanders, what is your biggest takeaway about the 5th round Saturday?
I think there are a couple things. I think number one, I think he fell out of the first round because of talent and performance. And that doesn't mean he's not a good college player. We've had a lot of guys who are good college players that have not gone in the first round. In fact, you guys know who the all-time leading passer in the history of college football is?
No.
Case Keenum. So,
Wow.
I believe Case Keenum was undrafted, maybe 7th round, but like college performance doesn't always equate to a guy being a really high draft pick. In fact, in a lot of cases, because those guys sometimes don't have the traits, you'll see guys who are record-breaking players in college become day 2, day 3 picks. That's not uncommon. And that's sort of, I think, to some degree, what Shador was like, he's not a first-round talent, but he's a really good college player. So I think that's round 1, round 2. Then I think after that, everything else comes into play. And there are a couple things there. Like, number one, I think there is the whole idea that you want your quarterback to blend in with the furniture, right? Most people don't want noise coming from the 40th or 50th person on their roster. And, that's the truth, and it's why, for example, like Cam Newton and Jay Cutler had trouble extending their careers, right? Like when they were done as starters, they were sort of done because it was hard to envision those guys as backups just blending in with the furniture. Tim Tebow, Colin Kaepernick, like there are a ton of examples of that, like where it's just it's teams collectively saying, just give me the anonymous guy. So I think that's part of it because once you get into the 3rd, 4th, 5th round, we're talking about depth pieces. We're talking about developmental players. Then the other piece of it is he narrowed his own field. And I think this is where they made the mistake, where Deion's camp made the mistake, was going around and telling people that only certain teams they want to play for. That's the way a top 5 pick operates. So essentially, this is a guy who maybe teams were looking at as a day 2 or day 3 talent operating like he was a top 5 pick. So he handled some of his meetings poorly with teams that maybe he didn't want to play for. And maybe those teams talked to other teams and told them about their experiences. And it just becomes like, okay, like, well, why do I want to deal with this? You know what I mean? Like, why do I want to guess if the guy wants to play for me? When you've got 200 other players that are going to be drafted that are like more or less treating every meeting they have like a job interview. So, like, I think it's all those things. Like, talent performs to the top, and then after that, I think it really comes down to what you want your backup quarterback to be, and then the way that the way that Shador and his camp handled all of this over the last couple of months.
By the way, Case Keenum, still the career passing leader at 19,217. Career pass completions, as you said, 1546. He's tied with Dylan Gabriel now, most TD passes.
I was going to say, Albert, I was going to just spew out like Timmy Chang as an answer.
I thought that's where you were going.
That was what was so funny to me. What was funny to me was like the Dylan Gabriel thing was like a lightning rod on Friday night. Like Dylan Gabriel went ahead of him. Dylan Gabriel was a really good college player. He's 2 inches shorter. Well, he's small. He's 2 inches shorter than him. Like now that makes a difference, but like Shador's not like 6'5", 230 either. So it's like I don't know. I think there were. I mean, we can turn this into a media discussion if you want, but I think there were people who decided ahead of time, like if he falls, I'm going to go nuts and make it about something that's like of my own creation, not based on any real information out there.
By the way, Keenum 1, Dylan Gabriel 2, Timmy Chang 3.
See, I had Chang there. I was going to say it, but I didn't want to embarrass myself in front of Albert Breer.
No. Timmy Chang was because that was when Norm Chow was in Hawaii, I think, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
And they were lighting the scoreboard on like they were lighting the scoreboard on fire every week. I think, if I remember right, you guys can look this up. I think Art Briles was the coach for Case Keenum at Houston. I think that's right. So, obviously, like these things, like I think people look at statistics, and it's just like, I mean, if people like, I don't want to make this about me, but like if people had listened to what I was saying over the last 2 months, they might have had a different picture of this instead of all of this ridiculous nonsense that like he somehow was entitled to go in the top 5.
And by the way, Art Briles was the coach there, 02 to 07.
So he wasn't the coach there. Then I think then he probably would have missed Case, right? Maybe it was Kevin. I think it was actually Kevin Sumlin with Case. Maybe
might have been.
I might have missed.
But
that.
he was
so
the coach there. Yep.
What is in your phone, Albert? Tell us something you haven't told anyone else before.
Man, you haven't asked me that question in a while, so I'm unprepared.
Oh, come on. Just give us that, the thing you won't tell us. Tell us that right there. Come on. Non-Bears. You got some information there. Draft-wise. Non-Bears. Scroll.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that the Derek Carr thing continues to bear watching. You know, like there's just a lot going on there with, I think it goes back all the way to like Kellen Moore's introductory press conference and Carr being sensitive about a couple of things that were said there, and then, there was I think Carr wanted a raise to affirm that he was a starter, and they wouldn't give it to him. So there's a lot of skeletons in that closet, I would say. And, I had an idea it might be Tyler Shuck for the Saints. Here's something for you. Mm-hmm. I had an idea that it might be Tyler Shuck for the Saints going into Friday. And one of the reasons I was told is because he's pro-ready. And having a pro-ready quarterback who played for Jeff Brom at Louisville sort of gives you leverage in that situation with Derek Carr, right? Because then you could say, well, now we got a guy who's ready to go. So stay tuned on the Derek Carr saga.
That's interesting.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting. And Art Briles did coach him for 1 year.
Okay.
There you
was
go.
he playing, or was he actually playing?
I think he was playing a little bit, yeah.
Was he start? Okay. Well, there you go.
There you go.
There you go.
Have a great rest of your day, man. Appreciate you as